In the land renowned for its philosophers, art, and democracy, there was a darker side, a brutal system of justice that matched the crimes in its severity. Ancient Greece wasn't just a beacon of culture and intellect. It was also a society where the wrongdoers faced punishments so harsh they still shock us today. Stay with us as we uncover the most infamous and terrifying punishments in Greek history, revealing a chilling reality beneath their celebrated legacy. Throughout ancient Greece, justice was not only about maintaining order, but also upholding the will of the gods. Their punishments served as warnings, grim reminders that crime had severe consequences. Here are some of the most notorious penalties ever enforced in this ancient world. Death by hemlock, the trial of Socrates. One of the most iconic punishments in ancient Greece was the execution of the great philosopher Socrates. In 399 BCE, he was sentenced to death for allegedly corrupting the youth and showing disrespect toward the gods. Rather than fleeing when given the chance, Socrates embraced his fate. He calmly drank a cup of hemlock, a deadly poison, in the presence of his followers. His execution is often seen as a tragic clash between personal freedom and the rigid authority of the state, marking a pivotal moment in Greek history. The Brazen Bull, a torturous innovation. The Brazen Bull, invented by Parallaus of Athens, stands as one of the most gruesome torture devices ever conceived. A hollow bronze sculpture in the shape of a bull, it became a literal death chamber. The victim was placed inside, and a fire was lit beneath the bull. As the metal heated, the person inside was slowly roasted alive, their screams eerily echoing from within. This horrifying spectacle was designed to resemble the sound of a raging bull, making it not only excruciating, but a terrifying form of public punishment. Ostracism, a silent banishment. Unlike physical torture, ostracism in ancient Athens inflicted a different kind of suffering. Citizens would vote to exile someone they believed posed a threat to the city. The banishment lasted 10 years, and while it wasn't physically painful, it cut deep emotionally and socially. Losing their home, status, and community, those ostracized were often condemned to wander foreign lands in hardship. This punishment even affected prominent figures like the esteemed Themistocles, who faced the harsh reality of exile. Stoning, a collective execution. One of the most ancient forms of capital punishment, stoning was a public act involving the entire community. It was reserved for serious crimes like murder or acts against the gods. The condemned would be pelted with stones by the crowd until death, symbolizing not only the crime's gravity but the shared responsibility of upholding justice. This brutal and public execution method reinforced the idea that societal order was everyone's concern. The wheel, a slow death. The breaking wheel, used to execute criminals, was a particularly savage method designed to maximize suffering. The condemned was tied to a large wooden wheel, and their limbs were systematically broken. Left exposed to the elements, they would endure a slow, agonizing death. The breaking wheel served not just as a punishment, but as a grim warning to others of the potential consequences of wrongdoing. The pit of Barathrum, an abyss for the condemned. In Athens, the pit of Barathrum was used as a final destination for criminals sentenced to death. Those condemned were thrown into the deep chasm, where they would either die from the fall or succumb to starvation and exposure. This pit symbolized the complete rejection of these individuals from society, a form of execution reserved for the most reviled criminals, including traitors. The image of being cast into an inescapable void was as much a psychological punishment as a physical one. Execution of women, cruel and unforgiving. Women who committed serious crimes, such as adultery, often faced particularly cruel fates. Rather than being publicly executed, they were forced to carry out their own deaths, either by hanging themselves or jumping from a great height. This grim method not only ended their lives, but was designed to strip them of any dignity or honor, a punishment meant to erase their memory entirely. Slavery, a lifetime of degradation. For many, slavery was an alternative to execution, but it offered little mercy. Criminals, debtors, and prisoners of war could all be sold into slavery. Condemned to a life of hard labor, with no hope of freedom, stripped of their identity and reduced to property, slaves faced a life of misery and degradation. It was one of the most feared punishments in ancient Greece because it denied individuals their freedom and personhood entirely. Scaphism, death by insects. While more commonly associated with Persia, There is evidence that the Greeks were aware of a torturous execution method known as scaphism. The victim would be placed in a hollowed-out tree trunk or boat, with only their head, hands, and feet exposed. Force-fed a mixture of milk and honey, they would eventually attract insects as their bodily functions decayed. Over days, the bugs would slowly consume the person alive, making it a terrifyingly slow and painful death. Exile to desolate islands, a death sentence in isolation. For those deemed irredeemable threats, exile to a deserted island was one of the harshest penalties. Unlike regular ostracism, where the individual could live elsewhere, this form of exile meant being sent to a barren, resourceless island. Left to fend for themselves, many exiles succumbed to starvation, exposure, or despair, cut off from all society. It was a fate akin to a living death, where survival was almost impossible. While the ancient Greeks are celebrated for their contributions to democracy, philosophy, and art, their methods of punishment reveal a far darker side of their civilization. From brutal public executions to the psychological torment of exile and slavery, justice in ancient Greece was not only about maintaining order, but also about sending a clear message. Crime had consequences, and those consequences could be terrifyingly severe. Be sure to subscribe for more fascinating insights into the strange and brutal realities of ancient civilizations.